who drove over from Hampton, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Jeremiah and Amanda, my brother and sister. You can find her on YouTube, and it's an awesome YouTube channel. It's one of the happiest YouTube channels you'll go and watch that don't depress you. All right, and it's loaded with information. She's known as the Weed Doc. She's got her doctorate in the medicinal field of natural. Your YouTube channel is SHTF, which it stands for Survival Homestead Teaching Farm. Yeah, so check it out, and she makes the best fire cider too. It's absolutely awesome. Thank you all for coming over. It's good to see you. All right, so today we're going to talk about continuing on security, sheltering, and communications. Security, I could bore you for the rest of your life on security. And I've spent 40 years of my life in the security field, disciplines of security, nuclear, mostly in anti-terrorism and personal protection, nuclear missiles, nuclear aircraft, presidential, special ops, on and on and on and on. That's all great. But it starts in the mindset, and then you have to incorporate it into a discipline, right? And I'm not quite as anal about it as I used to be. I think my wife would attest to that. It hasn't changed. I just kind of look at it from a different, maybe a different, you either get it or you don't. It's kind of how I see it at this point in life. All right? All right, and most of what I'm going to share with you are in my 2 books. Next month's class on the 5-mile radius is not in these books, except I think book 2, there's a small chapter on the 5-mile radius. And the 5-mile radius book, the intent would be book 3, and I do have an outline for it. I just haven't started really focusing on it since I retired. But I can tell you it's going to be about 400 pages. It focuses strictly on building your community, which we will cover next month. All this will culminate into that class. Focus on your community, using information and websites that you can go get information to focus in on threats and things of that nature. All right. So talking about security. Over many years, when you have conversations with people, it's like, well, what if it's 2 a.m. and someone comes up on your porch and you're not expecting it? Well, I'll just shoot them. Right? Well, I kind of used to think that way too, a long time ago. When I first came out of the military, retired from the military, and I still had the Kool-Aid in my veins, it was kind of like, you stay over there, I'll stay over here, and don't screw around. Well, the world doesn't work that way, right? So one of the things you really need to think about is understanding what is rule of law and without rule of law, and the conditions that you're in at the time of an event. 90% of the country can still be under a rule of law state, and your community, county might be in a WROL, where all law enforcement and justices have broken down, okay? So rule of law is when law enforcement and justice system are available to enforce existing laws. Without rule of law is all available law enforcement, courts, and justice systems no longer respond or are available to support and defend existing laws. You're on your own. Knowing the importance of establishing your family or your community, use of force, policy or force continuum for everyone to follow is critical. This is why I've mentioned in the past why it is so important that you get to know your sheriff. And where does your sheriff stand in your county? Okay? When an event surfaces where the use of force is required and it appears you know the threat, would this change your use of force policy in any way? Family and community leaders must understand and know when to switch from ROL to WROL and what the change implies and requires. The difference could significantly change how you protect your family. What does your state law say about using a lethal weapon in the line of self-defense? If I break, I think your battery may be getting weak. In the headset, not yours. If I break into your house at 3 a.m. and you're upstairs asleep and you hear me and come downstairs and I'm carrying your TV out of your house, do you have the legal authority to shoot me and kill me? You would have thought the state of Alabama, where we were living, we went through our legal classes for our church security, we thought the same thing. If you're upstairs and I have not posed a threat directly to you, or verbally stated I'm going to hurt you, and you shoot me and kill me or harm me, you're going to prison. In the state of Alabama.
Well, how are they gonna tell whether you said I'm gonna hurt you or not if they did?
You have to be careful what you say when they come to investigate.
Say nothing.
You cry and say you were afraid for your life.
It's important that you know these things. It's when and how does the law protect you, and what does it stand for? So as I said in, I think week one, month one, everything is built around risk management. The risk to me in my neighborhood may be a different risk to you in your neighborhood, right? And you got to understand those things. You may be rural and a homesteader, and the threat to you may be to your animals or to your crops or to your water source, where if you're within a mile of a urban area, the threat may be different. It may be more of a human factor, right? But you got to understand those different things, and that's all done through racking and stacking your priorities. So just as an example, and we'll cover this in greater detail next month in the 5-mile radius, here's just an example for Sevierville, Tennessee, right? So when you go down through here, it covers murders, rapes, robberies, assaults, burglaries, thefts, auto thefts, arson. Okay? And when you look over the years, this is through 2022. It looks like thefts and assaults are the two greatest threats in this area for this period that they surveyed through police records. Right? So next month in the 5-mile radius, we'll use this with a combination of about 15 to 20 other things, pull them together to show you how to use this data to build your threat matrix. Right? If you spend all your money preparing and just buying food and water, and you have no way to protect it, someone's going to come and take it from you. So here's an sample assessment mitigation. This was in book one. So basically what we're talking about here is, on down the left column, is risk mitigation, water assessment, security assessment, food storage, animal security, 24/7 security plan, neighborhood assessment. Whatever you want to put in there, right? Now you're going to conduct an assessment, and then you're going to determine the current status of these items for you. Okay, and then you're going to prioritize them, top to bottom, and you're going to list where you're vulnerable at, what you need to fix, and who's working on it. And in some cases, you may have multiple people, multiple names, and in many cases, you're going to have your name, because you or your family member are the only ones that are working on it, okay? What did you find? What is the fix? And how long is it going to take to fix it or to mitigate it? In some cases, it may be a vulnerability that's way too expensive, so you need to find another way around it. Identify threats to your prioritized list. You can look down the left side here. Gangs, perimeter attacks, insider threat, water, food, weather, and so on. And then you'll list priority 1 through priority 5. That if that is listed in your risk assessment, priority 1 through 5, and how you're going to respond to it. Oftentimes in the security field, when I would go into foreign countries, I spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe, Africa, parts of Russia, and out in the Pacific Orient, some down south of the border. We'd go into a foreign country and do an assessment before we would bring resources in, or we would send their information back to our leadership, hey, we need to find another place to come in at. We can't fix their vulnerabilities fast enough. They can't fix their vulnerabilities fast enough for us to bring assets in. And this is what we would find. Everything looks good, sounds good, until you start putting eyes on it, and you find they've duct taped it, hidden it. They don't want you to. It's embarrassing to many countries, right? You're from America. You're coming in here. We're proud of who we are. We just don't have a lot of money and training. Is what you normally would find. All right. This is my wife's favorite. We were talking about this before I came over this morning. The 4 S's for success. A wise man, a former boss actually, a high up boss, he's deceased now. He was at the time a 1-star general, Green Beret, and had been a former Delta Force commander. And he used to always tell us, don't forget your 4 S's. Dress for success, right? So rule number 1 is don't do stupid things. Rule number 2 is don't do stupid things with stupid people. Rule 3 is don't do stupid things with stupid people at stupid times. And rule 4, don't do stupid things with stupid people at stupid times at stupid places. Right? And if you instill this and kind of try to make it a way of your life to help you stay left of bang and think outside the box. As you do this and transition into it, when you go out to a store or go to a mall or pick a parking place, wherever you may be, these things are going to go off in your head. And these things are going to stand out to you as to, that's out of the norm, that's out of the norm, we shouldn't be here, we need to leave. Right? Or, gee, I want to park my car way over here so no one dings my door. And then you come out of the store and there's no one near your car except for a van that's sitting there with the engine running. Right? Your bells and whistles should be going off that could be a problem. Especially if you're alone or you're a female. Right? You have a device in your pocket almost all the time. It's called a key fob that's got an alarm on it. Right? You don't have to go to your car. You can turn around and go back in the store and wait, or you can ask for help. It's called using common sense. The 5 Ds of security. No matter where you live, where you go, what you do, if you will apply these 5 things to your principles and concepts, you're going to come out much better than if you don't. Deter, detect, deny, delay, defend. If you apply them in setting up security in any situations, your odds are much better. Deter is accomplished through making the objective tougher to enter using obstacles such as physical restraints. This, you can apply this in an apartment building just as well as you can on a farm. Detect. If deterrence fails, a plan must ensure prompt detection or early warning of an unwanted intruder is present. Detection warns of possible immediate danger. Almost all security systems are to do one simple thing, and that is to alert you with some type of alarm or noise that something changed, and it's to get your attention to focus towards it, right? Almost every security device that's out there is built by a human, which means it has a deficiency and they can't be beat. Okay, it is to let you know. Your home security system, someone breaks in your door, the alarm goes off. It didn't stop the intruder, it alerted you that something changed and there's a potential threat there, right? Detection, if deterrence fails, the plan must ensure prompt detection, again, of early warning. You can add, depending how you want to go about it for your home or structure, you can have all your hard walls alarmed, your windows and your doors, and then you can add a camera system to the exterior to give you early warning that something's approaching to your hard wall of your house. And then you can put cameras on the inside of your house as well for entry points. So delay includes human and or physical delays to unwanted threats. Building your security plan for your property, whether it's an apartment or a farm, which we will cover, you want to build it with what's called security in depth. You want to layer it, right? They penetrated the first layer, now they're at the second layer, now they're at the third layer, and it gets tougher and tougher. Your goal is to keep them as far away from you as possible. Deny. If delaying fails, denial is paramount until reinforcements arrive. Numerous options can be used to confront the threat. We're talking both lethal and non-lethal weapons or devices. Defend. If the first four Ds succeed, you most likely won't have to implement defend. Defend is the last stand before being overrun or making the decision to bug out. This is why establishing a cache is important to survival. Meaning if you have to flee because of a fire, a flood, or a threat, you have the ability to have some level of recovery for that moment. Whether it's blankets, pillows, coats, clothes, shoes, cash, food, water, protection, things of that nature. Defense in depth planning. Defense in depth is the coordinated use of multiple security countermeasures to protect the integrity of the objective. What is it you're trying to protect? The strategy is based on the principle that it is more difficult for an enemy to defeat a complex and multi-layered defense plan than to penetrate a single barrier. In a grid down SHTF type situation, the odds are the threats that are going to be coming at you are individuals who are hungry, want water, or they're looking for something to steal to sell. The odds are they are not going to have a lot of time or take a lot of time to run surveillance on you, right? If they have time to run surveillance on you for a period of hours or a period of days, it is likely that threat is for another reason, and it may be more personal. Running surveillance on you, if you do the same things the same way every day, those vulnerabilities are going to stand out to that person, right? We conducted a vulnerability assessment for a family a couple years ago that had every bell and whistle you could imagine. They had spent, I would guess, $2 million plus on their security at their home and everything they had. And it was impressive. So at the end of the day, we were sitting out on the porch having tea, beautiful place. And the gentleman proudly says, "So what do you think?" And I'm like, "It's impressive. You put a lot of time and effort and money into what you built here." He said, "Well, do I have any shortfalls?" I said, "How many days a week do you come out here and sit on this porch?" He said, "Well, when we're home, we do about every day, other than the winter." I said, "Right here's your vulnerability." I said, "See that tree line right outside of your fence over there? I can sit outside of your security and monitor you, and I can take you out from over there." That would be personal versus the SHTF that I was talking about. And a very predictable pattern. They had a very predictable pattern of when they left their compound of the property. So defensive depth minimizes the probability, again, of the efforts of the attacker. So when you talk about the difference between a local yokel who is going to try to rob you versus threats that you often hear our government talk about, like ISIS and threats of that nature. They're both threats, but they're totally different types of threats, right? They are professionals at running surveillance. You can have people among you that run surveillance on you, and if they're good at it, you'll never know it. The key is that the more you alter your patterns and the way you do things, you become a harder target because you're not predictable. Defense in depth physical controls, gates, perimeters, access control, barriers, bollards, gates, fences, towers, early warning technology, alarms, trenches, gullies, and cameras. The gentleman I was talking about who was vulnerable on his porch, shortly after our conversation, he went and bought a couple of portable towers to put on his property with thermal imaging that he could see into those tree lines. But he had it to spend, and it was a vulnerability that he mitigated through thermal imaging cameras. Keys and lock, control storage areas for food, ammo, weapons, medical, transportation, fuels. If you have a group of people on your property and you are storing medicinal, food, fuel, ammo, and things of these nature, you need to have a key control system in place. You need to control and only give access to 2 people, 3 at most, who have key control on the logs, because these become high-value items that others may want or need. And again, trust is not a given thing. Trust is earned. And you don't know if someone's child is hungry and the provisions that you have available to everyone, they may be trying to take extra food out to feed their family. So just something to think about. Capability to search mobile type vehicles before entering compound area or outer perimeter. You may set up an MOA or MOU with a local farmer down the road who is a good guy, and you're trading some medicinal care for maybe for some hay. So he drives the trailer into your property and goes through 3 layers of security to drop the hay off. You don't know if that vehicle was checked before it came in to your property. Good guy, but someone else may be using him as a vulnerability to get inside, maybe to just look at what you have and not hurt anyone. Years ago, I was in this horrible place called Djibouti, up in the northern horn of Africa. And one of the things that the locals were doing, anything for money. The poor folks that live in cardboard shacks, anything for money. And they were being paid to be pace counters, right? And what that means is from the gate or your perimeter to where your people sleep, or your gate to where you eat, because we had different areas, right? And they were pace counting how many steps, which they could calculate then to use with weapons from outside the area. So all this information is valuable. Controls help to reduce the risk of damage or loss by stopping, deterring, or slowing down an attack against an asset. Search and seizure steps within all zones. So we talked about the 5 Ds. So if you consider the bottom small circle is your most secure zone where your family's at, where you sleep, where you eat, there. Going out the bigger circles are your security in depth layers to build. And it shows on there the 5 Ds. There's another area on here that's going outside of your community, your property, and that is individuals who are you're going to use to go into the community or other areas to collect information. They need to be dirty. They need to wear really baggy clothes to blend in with the people who are maybe less fortunate and didn't prepare. They need to look and be like them. If you go in clean and you're wearing clothes that fit, you're going to stand out. And most likely, someone's going to try to follow you back to where your resources are at. All right, so urban, suburban, or rural radius. We'll cover this a lot more next month in the 5-mile class, but here's what we're talking about. So on the left, if you're in a urban apartment building, the yellow square at the top is you, right? So what you're trying to do is those red blocks, that is communicate and work with those around you to stretch out your layer of security and depth. Right? Working together. The middle one and the one on the right, the yellow one is you. And the red blocks is you stretching out into your community or to other farms to push that potential threat away from you. That means working with other people. So here you can see a neighborhood. Which would you prefer? You can see a neighborhood and you see a red arrow with a limousine sitting in front of a house, right? They drove right in, and they're now knocking on your door. Would you prefer that? Or would you prefer having set up a community where inside of the red, poorly drawn lines, you see a community, Red Cross is for your community medical, communications to the left of it, you have mobile security if needed, and you have individuals that walk the property perimeter. And you see top right, a gate, a human-made gate, and that black Suburban is now sitting up there. It's pushing a potential threat further away from your family. So here's another example. This is a neighborhood, right? And one of the things that we all do or all need to do is you need to have information about the people who are around you. Okay? And you can do this without sending out questionnaires or knocking on the door and asking if they have a fire. Just being observant. Remember talking about getting out of that 90% mindset and separating yourself from others. So the little boxes you see on there, the X means ex-military. The C means conservative, the Y means owns a firearm, the L means left-leaning, and the U means unknown. And this is all through a period of just, having hot dog burns, chili cook-offs, going for walks, talking to people, and it's assessing. Why this is important, you need to know it now, is because if you go into a SHTF WROL without rule of law situation, you need to know who is likely to be on your side or not on your side. Years ago, when I still had Kool-Aid in my veins, I used to have this mentality that when things go bad, everyone around me needs to be people of faith and right-leaning. The world doesn't work that way. I can't just knock on people's doors and say, you don't fit my criteria, you need to sell your house and move. Right? Now there's a nut that lives over there who's crazy. You don't want that label. So now to whenever, how can you work with these people who are your neighbors or in your apartment or whatever it may be? How can you work with them? You may totally disagree on politics, but when you're starving or someone's shooting at you or trying to break into your home, it's not going to matter which way they think politically. You're going to need help, right? So keep that in mind. This is just an example of developing a plan. So you have a main road just beyond the stop sign and you turn into this neighborhood, right? So you're looking at it from the neighborhood looking out. How much distance do you have that you can start creating your security in depth, right? And one of the mindsets that we want is we want to, if there is a threat coming towards us, one of the first things, if we can, we want to do, once we have evaluated, and you can use drones to do this, by doing perimeter runs with your drone, with camera, and looking at footage to see if there's anything coming at you. But anything that is mobile, as in a vehicle, a truck, whatever it may be, you want to eliminate it as a threat. You want to force them out of that vehicle on foot. Okay? Then, if you can, if four-wheeler is eliminated, motorcycles, you want to take away those avenues of approach. I want to make it as hard on you as possible to get to my people. So now looking from the same place out, a plan could be cutting down trees and creating barriers and creating a serpentine that you have to drive through that's going to slow you down to give me the advantage. Further back, looking the same direction, is I have the serpentine coming in, and I've put a person on the right. You can make your own, you can use sandbags, whatever you want, to create some type of an overwatch, security overwatch position. This is where we were talking earlier about your use of force policies and the force continuum is so important. If you got, you need to know your people really well if you're going to put them out in a position. Okay? Just above this position, to looking off to the right, up on the hill, positioning as my wife calls them, a JPQR, what is it you call them? It's a listening post observation post. And it's someone to have early eyes and ears on all the approach paths. Okay? She just gives me a hard time. You see on here adjust seasonal and per intelligence or information. When the trees fill out and they're covered with leaves, it will drastically change your ability to what you can see. So you will have to adjust to that. Back behind, now we were right here, we're looking this way towards the road, so now we're going to turn around 180 degrees and look behind us. Just beyond that, you see a position that is titled on here a sniper. And you see where it's called security, and you see the purple things across the road. This is the narrowest path on the entire approach route to get into where the homes and the people are at. So what this is saying is, anything other than a person on foot, they've got to go up a really, really steep hill to the left that has trees. They're not going to get up it, not even on a four-wheeler. And to the right at the guardrail, it drops straight off. So they have to come, if they're still trying to get through in a vehicle, they have to come through this point, right? So how can you block it? You can use trees, you can use cables, you just have to be a little creative, but you can block this off. And you've noticed so far to this point, you don't see any houses or human life. So we've been able to push it back to block it before you can even get to. Just off to the right, up here where the green arrow is pointing, is another security point that you can establish one. It's at a high point where you can see everything coming from the main road, and you can also see down into the developed area, and it's also a high point for communications. All right, so sheltering. There's all kinds of shelters, right? You can have stone, you can have brick, you can have siding, and you're most likely in a developed suburban area in many cases. There's pros and cons. Do you have a basement? How many sides of your foundation are earth or if all? So shelter fixed is at your bug-in location. It allows additional stock if space is available. Most are not hardened. They have wood or siding, easy to burn or penetrate with bullets. Not far behind the 95% urban crowd. Harder to keep plans a secret because of neighbor proximity. It's difficult to escape after the first 24 to 48 hours. Will be an early target of the 90 to 95% crowd. On the grid and up the creek. Firearm restrictions often apply. Most urban fixed structures pose a threat. City lockdown may impact your ability to escape. Shall we continue? Shelters in urban and suburban. They're wonderful under normal conditions. That's about all I can say. Urban suburban, Agenda 2030, formerly known as Wilderness Corridor, and formerly Agenda 21. The goal is box cities and high rises, 400 square foot boxes for you to live in. A large percentage of your 95%ers live in these areas. Crime will be a way of life when some have all the fun. Very unlikely one will escape after the first 48 hours, minimal food and water after 72 hours, minimal ability to defend, minimal space for survival storage, minimal to no availability to grow food. Fire can destroy and kill hundreds or more. Shall we continue? It's easy to be locked down within a beltway or a highway system. Beltways were built for convenience. The beltways also it also offers authorities another mechanism to lock you within the confines of that beltway. All right. Several years ago, it was a Thursday or Friday, sleeting, and the city of Huntsville, Alabama, where I was working, started locking down all the bridges and the exits off the highway because of ice. So I was trying to maneuver my way out to drive here to Dandridge. We had just bought our home up here. And it was an eye-opener. We're talking a city of maybe 400,000 at that time. Finding a way to get out of that inner beltway area, if you will, to the back roads where the roads weren't blocked or they were passable. So if you are currently trapped inside of a beltway or loop highway, you need to definitely figure out how you're going to get out of it. Imagine you have some form of a virus or something that is spreading really, really fast, and your population is highly, let's say you get from 20 to 60% infected within a week, and they make a decision that to keep it from spreading, they're going to lock down the beltways. How do you get out? On foot? Better have a plan if it applies to you. Shelter rural, it's not part of the 90-95 percenters. Control your own security for property, food, personnel. Control your own grid and water sources. Easier to create standoff from potential threats. Less pedestrian traffic, reducing the threat. Allows garden, livestock, hunting, fishing. Much easier to team and control large blocks of land between multiple teams. More likely to find a basement to use as a bunker. Easier to establish direct line comms and or triangulate communication and security plans to cover larger terrain. Less access to medical needs. Must control sewage and sanitation needs versus urban. May impact your ability to team. I know one of the concepts that some folks use here in Tennessee in another area is that everyone is kind of on their own doing the homestead thing. But if you need Farmer Bob next over or 2 farms down, Farmer Bob's there for you. They just don't get in each other's business. Does that make sense? Doors, there's numerous ways that you can protect your doors. One is to get a door that's solid, not hollow. You can build your own, you can buy them. Everything from 55-gallon drums filled with water, wedges, the white one there, we have a couple of them to use. One of the biggest shortfalls in many homes that are contractor and factory that you don't do yourself. Most doors and window frames are standard construction and they're not acceptable from a security perspective. You need to add or change the deadbolt to a heavy duty one. You need to add a steel master plate on the frame and remove standard screws. Replace them with 3 to 4 inch screws in the frame. If not, you can easily kick that door. Even with a heavy-duty steel door and the screws and all that, it is still possible with the right tool and time that you can blow that door out. Because we had it happen to us in Dandridge when we were still living in Alabama during the week. It was a steel door and frame, and they used a crowbar and they blew the door about 20 feet inward. It just exploded inward. Won't happen again. Windows. Stay away from windows and keep light block from exterior view. You want your home to not appear lived in. Block windows to prevent projectiles from being thrown inside. Use windows, alarms, and blockers for security. Light discipline is critical. You can use plywood. You can use paint. Screening, you can put bars. There's all different ways to protect your windows. The biggest thing is mentally accepting that you need to do it, right? Everyone's not bad, everyone's not a criminal, but it only takes one to ruin your day. Additional cost often equals upgraded protection. It doesn't always guarantee positive outcome. Bulletproof versus bullet resistant. Many people have in their minds that X is bulletproof. That car has bulletproof windows. Doesn't exist. If you put the right size round onto the exact target repeatedly, that once was bulletproof is no longer bulletproof, and it is now penetrated. Okay? Never forget to remember child safety and maintaining extraction or secondary to exit and escape. On the left you see, and on the right you see, there's a form of what's called mylar curtains, and they're super expensive. Okay, but you gotta reinforce for the weight of them. But you can actually use them to protect from light, also rounds being fired in, and so forth. I'm actually gonna send I have all your email addresses, I think. I'm planning on sending to you after this class and before the next one. It's a risk assessment survey for you to do on your own home. And one of the things you'll go through, you'll see it breaks it into categories. But if you have children and you have upstairs bedrooms, what is on the outside that would allow a bad person to use to elevate, to climb into those windows? It addresses child safety. One of my favorites is the cat bells here. Cat bells work great because no matter what you do, you're going to jingle them bells even if you reach and grab a hold of them. But just hanging them on ribbon, they work great on sliding glass doors. The little 2-pack to your right, you can buy these things for like $5 or so. The dowel rods or security bars. When I lived in St. Louis, Missouri, in the suburban area, there was a group going through in the afternoons while people were at work, and they were breaking into homes. And they were doing it through sliding glass doors. And they could, from the time they approached your door to the time they were in your home, was less than 2 minutes. And they were using jacks to lift the frame out and walk right into your home. And most of the homes were fenced in the back, so they had a bit of cover from eyes from neighbors seeing them come into the homes. So sliding glass doors are very vulnerable. Garage doors, again, there's all kinds of sensors. I was going to bring the one that you see is the barking Rex. I was going to bring it, and I actually forgot. But, we have a barking Rex that was gifted us from my father-in-law years ago. And it's a little blue box that you can plug in and it's set in the floor. And it's a German Shepherd. And he will bark when it's a motion detector, right? And he'll bark for like 3 minutes, and then there's a siren that turns on. You can set it on the floor, say in a bedroom, and it will pick up through a wall. So anything that would come across our front towards our porch, it would pick it up and start barking. Okay? They're less than $100. They're fairly affordable. Garage doors are also vulnerabilities. Exterior standoff equals early warning and protection. Everything we're trying to do here is to protect you and your family through the approach paths, whether you're using moving dirt and you're planting bushes that are going to scrape the heck out of them when they come through it. You're wanting to create paths that are to your advantage, right? If you build your defenses, you want to build them to where you have created paths to your strong points, okay? So if you have minimal people and you don't have, you got to protect yourself 24/7. So if you have minimal people, you're going to need a lot of non-human devices to help push threats to certain points, to where it's your strong point. Apartments are fairly vulnerable. There still are things that you can use in apartments on the steps and so forth to delay threats. Standoff also helps prevent fire bombs thrown in private homes and structures. Do things like post beware of dog signs, whether you have a dog or you don't. Put a sign up, beware of dog, and have your barking Rex. Get a couple of medical trash bags and cram them full of paper and just put a sign up that says this house is contagious. Whatever works for you. If they are coming on your porch carrying a threat, a weapon, right? If they're coming towards you, you need all the time to your advantage. If there's a sign there that says this house is contagious and they stop for 2 seconds to read it, that's your opportunity. It's taking advantage of using things to take advantage to put yourself in a better offensive position. Make yourself a hard target. What will your response be when the doorbell rings? Exterior, again, use common sense and think outside the box. Everything doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You can be creative and repurpose things, visit the city dump and find all kinds of stuff up there to help you to your advantage. Less than lethal perimeter technology deployed with lethal offensive technology can delay and or stop threats. Fences, spikes, concertina wire, spikes, springboards, moats, glass, flashbangs, K9 are just a few items that you could use. I was down in Mexico years ago. Actually, it was in 2012, I think. One of the things that I noticed was all these homes in the neighborhood had fences, right? But at the top of them, they had taken beer bottles and busted them. And they had lined the top of their fence with broken beer bottles and used cement to hold them in. So anyone trying to climb over the wall was grabbing a hold of these broken glass bottles. It's creative. These are just some examples, everything from used tires, concertina wire to fences. It all depends on where you are, what is your threat, and how, to what degree you want to mitigate that threat. This is an example within Book 1 of Security Alerting Matrix, right? So if you live in a neighborhood and you have a community team, and there is a threat that changes your daily norm, how are you going to alert your other people? Right? An air horn, a bell, a large bell at a high point on the property. How are you going to let them know X home on X street needs reinforcement? It may be a medical issue. It doesn't have to be someone there with a device to hurt someone. It could be a medical issue, right? Have you already pre-identified who in your community has a medical background? As part of the list that I will be sending you all out has in there, going through and identifying who is around you and what skills they offer. Okay, so then the alerting matrix is basically going through and identifying like 4 levels, what conditions will apply to that level, actions that your group would take, and there's some examples. You can take it and create your own. Okay? So, I just brought in a few items here that you can look at if you wish. I could not justify in the process of getting into preparedness, I couldn't justify spending $4 to $5+ grand on a set of PBS 14s night vision when there's so many other things that you need to buy, right? So I have a couple of different night vision devices that were way less. This one right here, this Bushnell, I think it was like $300. It works great. It records that one and this sniper one. You can run it, wire it directly into a TV. So if you've got 3 people in your home and 2 people are asleep and you're trying to you're in an elevated condition point, you can run this into a TV, see what it's seeing outside on your TV screen, and you can be on the other side of the room watching the other side of your house. Okay. So these are just a rangefinder. A rangefinder. Why do I need a rangefinder on my property? If you go through and you look at what's the average short gun and long gun that bad people, criminals, thugs, whoever would use, what is the distance from my home and what I'm protecting to my perimeter or my neighborhood down the street? Do I even know what the maximum effective range is of my handguns or my rifles? So if I use a rangefinder, it will help me from the opposite end of what weapons can be used against me effectively if they haven't penetrated my property. Okay? So again, we want something to create noise for us. At 3 a.m., the norm is quiet and asleep. You want something to change, whether you have a security system on your home. This device right here, I think was $40 at Lowe's. You can set it on your porch, and as long as something's distracting the motion, it will keep beeping, right? And like this is in your house. The motion part of it will detect it and set this off. There's tons of these that are out there. This one you can put on windows and doors. Someone walks into your door at 3 a.m. or whenever. This is going to wake you up. These are like $3, right? Cheap stuff. There's all different kinds of them. For boats, you can have an air horn, right? You can alert. If you are out working on your property and your spouse is in the house and there's a threat at the house, right? And you don't see it because you're out on the property, a crime may be being committed in your home. But if you have something like this nearby where they can get a hold of it, they can start sounding that alarm, it will help. Patio door locks. These are the devices you put under your door. When they move, they alarm. More locked door stops. This one here is relatively inexpensive. Basically, you put a blank load in it, and you strap this to a post or something, and you can run a cord over from the pin. It's like a tripwire, basically. And someone goes and trips it, it sets off the blank. It's this one's I think a 12 gauge blank primer. They make different kinds of these. This one here you can make for free. This is a small example. But you can use a water hose, you can use carpet, cut it, make carpet streams with it, and you fill it full of nails, right? So we were talking about getting vehicles from the mobile vehicle, maybe down to a motorcycle or four-wheeler. You can use things like this in those paths that when a four-wheeler tries to go around your barriers, it's going to grab hold of the tires. And if it's a carpet, one of these is a carpet roll, it'll wrap around and stop that four-wheeler. It's also heck on humans' feet too. And they're cheap and they're easy. These are a little more expensive. This is a Dakota system, Dakota Alert. Dakota Alert, last time I looked, you can add to these, make multiples. The board that controls it all is in your home. And you can use these also with communication devices. These will work long range on like farms, long driveways. These are based off, to some degree, they're based off the concept of the Air Force. The Air Force used a system called MAID-MOBs, Magnetic Anti-Intrusion Detection System, Magnetic Intrusion Line Sensors, that we used in our high-priority weapons areas. This is based off of the same concept. These you can put between 2 trees, 2 posts, ever what. And these, the control pad is here, it's in your house. These are, you walk between them, and these are motion detectors that you can put away from your house. As long as you have to test it to see your distance on it. So these are just some examples of numerous. You can go from building it for free to spending a ton of money, but you don't have to spend a lot of money, okay? Communication, the thing on communication, the big thing is understanding, first and foremost, ensure safety and security of each person in your family or group. Determine the next plan of action and acknowledge or communicate a phase has begun or changed. How do you want to do it? Plans could be meeting at a rally location or secondary location, pass on information as to one's individual status. We used to call it a sit rep in the military. Information gathering, the more information you obtain about the situation, the more effective you will be able to keep your family safe. Basics to a plan, who are you going to communicate with? What method will you use to communicate with them? When will you communicate with them? How often? Who? Your immediate family and those in your group. What methods will you use to communicate? Use tools that you may have, but you got to practice them. Okay? Your phone, text, CD, radio, ham radio, landline, all the way down to using a human runner, smoke signals, and hand and arm signals. Communication plans at all phases of your plans must adjust accordingly. So much in preparedness is evergreen, meaning you have to continually look at, review, and update your plans. Okay, things change, roads change, people change, right? Diets change. I have a friend up in North Alabama who prepared for years and years. He had 55-gallon drums full of food. And his health status changed. And all that food that he now had, he was no longer able to eat it. All right, so he had to go on a gluten diet. So at 70 years old, he had to go through the whole transition. When will you communicate? Consider a schedule. Set up a schedule for those who are mobile to attempt to keep contact with those who are at home once every hour, determine in advance when attempts are to take place, such as half past every hour. If you have multiple teams, I will consider a different time within the hour for each team, and also take into consideration if you are in 2 time zones. Like down around Chattanooga area. We got folks, over survival folks that are over in the Coe and over in Chattanooga that are all part of the group. And you're talking 2 different time zones. If you don't remember that, it's going to bite you in the behind. Be clear and understandable, ensure completeness in your instructions and explanations. Be unambiguous, concise, straight to the point with specifics. Confirm all users understand the plan, practice the plan. If you don't practice it, it's going to fail you. Be clear about what it is you're trying to communicate. Have it documented. Express. If you're driving down the road and you're implementing part of your plan, and something changes and everything's based on time sequences, and you have a blowout on your tire, or a threat imposes on you and it's impeding on those time sequences, your stress level is going to go up and you're going to forget what it is you're supposed to be doing. You need to have it. You need to have it in a safe place written down. When I was working in Alabama, it was 240 miles from there to Dandridge, and I had a book printed out of the 240 miles in 10-mile increments. That if something happened and I had to walk every day, the 10-mile increments that I would cover, and I had a mark on a printed paper map with landmarks. And I had 3 copies. I had a copy, she had a copy, and a trusted agent halfway had a copy of that plan. So hopefully one of them would care enough to come up for me. Again, the plan must be thorough and specific. If you identify a rally point at X location on X street at X hour, make sure X street has one location. It could be a disaster if you waited at X location on a family member to arrive at X hour and they never show up. We'll use Circle K as an example. Circle K is your rally point at 10 a.m. and you're there at 10 a.m. and they don't show up. And now you're frustrated. But what you didn't realize, one, is you never personally went to that location to confirm it with your team. So they're at another Circle K or 7-Eleven down the street. They just didn't go to the right one because you didn't practice and you didn't have the right one documented. Okay? Don't make the assumption that they know who you were talking about and where you were talking about. Use photographs in hard copy plans. If you're using a building or phase or tiered plan, and you consider alternatives to communicating after a cell, text, and email. This all goes back to, briefly mentioned in a previous class, this all goes back to your PACE plan. Primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. And how you set it up. Okay? And there is the PACE. Primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. We use this in the military, and it's a great tool and asset for you to use today. And here's an example. Dad, mom, daughter, and son. They have a PACE plan. Primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency of how we're going to reach dad. Dad's primary is a text message, but mom's is a phone. Daughter's is a text, and son's a text, right? You may work in a location that won't allow you to have phones. So how am I going to get an emergency message to someone on my team or my family that works where they can't have a cell phone? What else is available to me to notify them? That's what you got to identify and list in your PACE plan. So here's an example of a communication team lead-in PACE plan for your team members. This is if you have a large community, I think kind of what you're working on in your community of where folks are spread, is you can have quads, like quad A, B, C, D, everybody see it. And then you have a team leader, and then each quad has their teams, and that's what this is an example of. Once I communicate with you, it's then your responsibility for your quad to communicate with the people on your team. It's like the old college. Neighborhood security communication plan. This is just an example. Again, if you have a security team in your neighborhood, the positions, the methods to communicate, what message you're going to use. For the last 15 years before retiring, most of the folks around Huntsville knew if they got a message from me, a text message, and it said the tide is high, it meant you better be getting near where you want to be at, because things are changing. What is your message? Crisis Hub. this was something that was learned during 911 after the terrorist attacks had taken place. And they shut down all the cell services. The lesson learned was they didn't realize that in most cases, when they shut down the cell tower, that the cell phone capability that you could still text message. And another lesson learned was we could all be in the same disaster area and we can't communicate with each other, we can't text or anything. However, I could send a text to my Aunt Jeannie in Detroit, and she would get it. And Aunt Jeannie could text back to all of you and tell you what my message was, and you could get it. We just couldn't communicate together. Okay? So think about that if you have an Aunt Jeannie. Just make sure it's not Uncle Joe that emails you from Nigeria telling you that you need your help. Communication plan again, devising it if you have any thoughts at all on bugging out. You want to know what phases and plans you're going to use. Again, these are all evergreen. So some examples would be phase 1, make contact with all participants of the plan, identify each person once the emergency event begins or is known. 2, everyone heads to the rally point. 3, consider reaching out to extended family. We all don't think alike. We all have different backgrounds, we all have different levels. Some put more into it than others. So here's 2 examples, okay? So have you given consideration to what will trigger your plan? Civil strife in the community, state, bank holiday, trucker union strike, government shutdown, pandemic. How about practicing your plan? So triggers. Example 1, a family of 8 members living in 4 locations. Would the families initiate the bug out plan if the television signal went down during a thunderstorm? If you answered yes, return to start, returning your get out of jail free card. If the television goes down and the power fails, cars won't start, and the dog is hiding under the bed, you might want to consider that something is happening. In the past exercise, the trigger would possibly be the loss of electricity. You may include in your plan to engage an initial communication check between the 4 homes within the first 15 minutes. Example 2, a trucker strike is scheduled on a national level and will begin next week. With just-in-time trucking providing human needs as needed, would you alert your family team to monitor and then consider planned measures? Remember, you want to be part of the prepared and ahead of the unprepared sheet. We should place more emphasis on the end result caused by the action. Ask, how will this impact my family? You need to stay ahead of it versus with it or behind it. So here's 3 more examples. John, this is on how you would communicate. John, this is Bob. We're departing our house now with all the food and weapons listed. We will be at your house ASAP, but traffic on Highway X is likely to be slow to a stop. Or, example 2. Team 1, this is Team 4, secure and mobile with complete package, estimated arrival within the estimates of the plan. Or 3, consider canned pre-planned messages such as Team 1, Team 4 initiating category A. A could mean team is secure and mobile and will arrive within established estimates. Category B would mean Team 4 delayed 30 minutes because of a flat tire and will arrive outside the planned estimates but within the limits established in Category B plan. Design your own measures, messages, estimates. Okay, this is more on the triggering your plan. I'll be sending these slides out to you afterwards. You can read through it. It's more thoughts on the same. And then there's what's called the other plan. If all else fails, then what? This is the all else fails communication plan. You should set up a plan in case all heck breaks loose and your other plans completely fall apart or something happens that your communication plan didn't consider. You gotta have a fallback plan, okay? Imagine the worst case, the end of the world as we knew it scenario. Cell phone usage goes out, traffic is jammed everywhere, roadblocks are set up, whatever. You need ways to communicate. You need several contingency plans that will work for you. Brainstorm different scenarios. Because we are on the road a lot, before it was Huntsville back before to here, and out doing teaching preparedness classes and so forth. I invested in this device. So there is money required. This is called a mini stick. And during Hurricane Helene and other times, we were on a trip last week on a cruise, and out on the Gulf was using this to send messages. Okay, this connects to a satellite. I cut it on, I have an app on my phone, I can type messages on my app, I can send text messages and email, right? This is like, I think it's 60 bucks a month. This is a very minor version of Starlink. So during Helene, when we had no communication where I was at, I was able to send messages to my wife to let her know it was okay, and so forth. Okay. Starlink costs money. Starlink is awesome. We used it during Hurricane Helene when we had nothing else on the ground. It's an awesome asset, but it costs money. You can get, when I send these out, I'm not going to waste your time covering these, but I have some examples in here of communication plans that you can go through and devise your own if you so desire. For communications, again, CD radios, ham radios, GMRS radios, all the way down to walkie-talkies. We use walkie-talkies with our neighborhood team, but we're moving toward GMRS radios, hams to communicate outside of our neighborhood with other like-minded individuals. So, does anyone have any questions on anything? I know it's like a fire hose. I want to get as much information to you as possible that you can, if you so desire, you can then go to areas that you want more information on, or on devices, or whatever it may be, to help you. Don't reinvent the wheel. There's tons of people out here that may not know who they are, but there's tons of people out who are doing this thing called preparedness from many communities. And honestly, you won't find a more awesome group of people. All right, next month is 5 mile radius, and it's a fire hose. It is a ton of information, but I'm going to show you how to use websites to gather information. And what we build upon is for your community. We're going to use Surveyable as the community. Graduation rates, employment rates, rates of home rental versus home ownership, job providers. And we look at all the crime statistics. We look at the different religious affiliations. We look at all this stuff and we combine it together and build a threat matrix to say to you, here are the top 5 possible threats based on this public information that's out there for you. And then there's some other websites I'll show you that's free, legal, that you can go find out a ton of information. I get every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. I get an email from Nexus Lexus, and it tells me a report of all the criteria that I asked for. I set up a 5 mile radius around my house, and I put in like crime data, rape, assaults, burglary, and things of that nature. And every Sunday morning, it sends me an email with a report of that criteria that I asked for. And it's free. You don't pay anything for it.
What's it called?
Nexus Lexus. Yeah, I'll next class, or shoot me a note and I'll send you the link. And you can go in and put in a zip code for any community. And then you go through the criteria, and there's probably 300 or 400 items, criteria you can pick from for your area. And then there's other websites that will show you how if you're watching someone, you can put their information in at any time. They like sign into a restaurant or anything like that. It will send you a blurb to let you know where they are. We use, I'm an anti-app person. I hate apps. My wife turned me on to one. What is it called? Life 360? I have it on my phone, she has it. But it used to be everywhere we drove to, like to Alabama and back. It's like, I'm at the crossroads in Chattanooga, I made it through Chattanooga, I'm here. Well, on this, we don't have to text anymore on Life 360. She can punch me in, the two of us, and it will show what speed I'm driving, it'll show where I'm walking, it'll show if I exit to go to the restroom, or if I stop to get a piece of greasy pizza from Circle K. It will show all this stuff. It's not that we are tracking one another. If something happens and I lose contact with her, this app will show me the last place she was where I can start looking for her. Or in the case, you may have heard it on the news, the young lady that went over the hill and was trapped in her car for 6 days last week. She was pinned in her car, and no one found her. She survived, but had she had that app, you can walk with that app. If she's on that app, you can walk right to her, and it'll take you right to where that phone's at. But as we tell folks, you know, had this lady had a whistle in her car, they would have found her much sooner. She was yelling for help, and they were right above her, and they couldn't hear her. She could hear them, but they couldn't hear her. But if she had had a whistle or some device, they could have found her. So, anyone? I appreciate y'all being here. Thanks. Hopefully you got something out of it. Again, if you want, we got the books over there. If you got any questions on this stuff, just shout. Thank you.